part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the NewsHour is also provided by AT&T and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
President-elect Clinton announced 4 more top-level appointments today. Harvard professor Robert Reich as Labor Secretary, University of Wisconsin Chancellor Donna Shalala as Secretary of Health and Human Services, Florida's top environmental official Carol Browner to head the Environmental Protection Agency, and University of California, Berkeley economist Laura Tyson to head the Council of Economic Advisors. At a news conference this afternoon in Little Rock, Mr. Clinton was asked if he agreed with his budget director, Leon Panetta, about delaying a middle-class tax cut.
Leon said, and I think he was right, that we couldn't ask for one in the absence of a credible long-term deficit reduction plan, and I think he's absolutely right about that. I think that when I give the Congress a budget for the next year, it has to be part of a multi-year plan where people can really see long-term deficit reduction.
We'll have more on today's appointments later in the program. In economic news today, the Labor Department reported its consumer price index rose 0.2% in November. That put inflation at a 3.1% annual rate so far this year. The Commerce Department reported retail sales rose 0.4% in November. It was the 5th straight monthly gain. The U.S. Conference of Mayors reported emergency food requests rose an average of 18% in the nation's cities this year. The survey also found that more than 20% of those requests had to be refused for lack of resources. Robin?
Somalia's 2 main warlords agreed to a ceasefire today, but the security situation in the country remained unstable. Overnight fighting in Mogadishu forced the cancellation of relief convoys. Looting and fighting continued in towns outside the capital. Pentagon officials said relief workers in the southern town of Kismayo had been taken hostage and negotiations were underway for their release. In the day's peace accord, the 2 main warlords agreed to remove their forces from the capital within 48 hours, but not to disarm them. UN officials claimed it a first step in what will be a long and difficult political reconciliation. In Washington, a State Department spokesman said UN Secretary General Boutros Boutros-Ghali had asked the U.S. to expand its military mission in Somalia. He requested U.S. troops stay until the feuding clans are disarmed and a new police force is set up. The Secretary General of NATO said today the Western Alliance would be willing to use force to stop the fighting in Bosnia. But Manfred Werner said NATO would do so only at the request of the United Nations. Werner did not specify what action the alliance might take. His comments came after a 2-day meeting of NATO defense ministers in Brussels. At his news conference this afternoon, Bill Clinton was asked whether he supported U.S. military intervention in Bosnia to enforce the no-fly zone.
I have been in favor of enforcing the no-fly zone for some time. The United States, I believe, has been willing to be a part of that because that can be done from the air without a commitment of ground troops. And our problems with that in the past has been the risk that the French and British soldiers might be exposed to were the no-fly zone to be enforced. It is my understanding that there may be some movement in the British and French positions, and if there is some movement, I think anything we can do to turn up the heat a little there to try to reduce the carnage is worth trying.
Driving rain, wind, and snow hammered the northeastern part of the U.S. today. Flooding in New York City shut down the subways and commuter trains and left cars submerged on a major highway along the East River. On the coastlines of Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Maryland, large wind-driven waves caused major flooding. Low-lying areas in New Jersey were evacuated. In Pennsylvania, the problem was snow. It brought traffic to a standstill on interstate highways. There were also large accumulations of snow in West Virginia, Western Maryland, and upstate New York. Another storm system caused major rain and snow problems in the western states of California, Oregon, and Washington.
President Bush today thanked the 600 members of his Drug Advisory Council for their role in the fight against drugs. He said drug use all across the country had declined during his term in office. He spoke this morning in Washington.
Today there are more anti-drug coalitions than ever, over 1,000 across the country because of your efforts. Overall drug use decreased by more than 12% between 1988 and 1991. Occasional cocaine use went down 25%, twice the goal that we all set. Adolescent cocaine use, we'd hope to reduce that by 30%, and the facts are clear. It has fallen by more than 60%.
The three major commercial television networks have agreed to control violence on TV. Illinois Senator Paul Simon announced today that ABC, CBS, and NBC will not televise portrayals of gratuitous or excessive violence. A new law sponsored by Senator Simon granted the networks an antitrust waiver so that they could confer on that issue. In Minneapolis, a former Catholic priest was convicted of sexually molesting a 15-year-old girl who was babysitting for his children. The incident occurred in 1987. James Porter faces other similar charges in Minnesota, Massachusetts, and New Mexico.
A federal judge today dropped a key charge against former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger. Judge Thomas Hogan said the charge Weinberger lied to Congress violated the 5-year statute of limitations. Also on the Weinberger story today, Attorney General William Barr said he will not appoint an independent counsel to investigate another one, Iran-Contra prosecutor Lawrence Walsh. Congressional Republicans, including Senate Minority Leader Bob Dole, had asked for one. They said the indictment of Weinberger 4 days before the election was timed to harm President Bush's re-election chances. Barr said today the accusation did not merit an independent counsel, but the Justice Department's criminal division would continue to look into those charges.
The battle over power in Russia continued today, with the country's Congress blocking Boris Yeltsin's latest bid to limit its power. Vera Frankel of Worldwide Television News narrates our report.
The Congress continued its policy of seeking to reduce the powers of President Yeltsin while protecting itself. In a surprise move, the conservative-dominated Congress banned national referendums questioning public confidence in the highest bodies of state power, including the Congress itself. The vote by a clear majority effectively ties Yeltsin's hands in seeking national support for his reform program. But a close Yeltsin aide insisted a compromise could still be found.
I prefer not to dramatize this fact. I don't think that it will affect the negotiations we have now between two branches of the government. I think that Yeltsin will come to agreement with Congress about formula of referendum that will not violate new legislation.
As the debate raged inside the Kremlin, rival groups demonstrated outside. Yeltsin supporters chanted, while others recalled the good old days of Stalin's rule, showing the strength of Russia's young democracy.
A fugitive Palestinian and an Israeli paramilitary policeman were killed in a shootout in the occupied West Bank today. 4 other policemen were injured. The shooting happened after the Israelis blew up the Palestinians' hideout. They said he was wanted for guerrilla attacks on Israelis. Another Palestinian was shot to death in a separate clash with an Israeli army unit in the West Bank town of Hebron.
President Bush awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom to 10 people today. The recipients of the nation's highest civilian honor came from diverse fields. They included veteran television journalist David Brinkley, whom Mr. Bush praised for explaining the complexities of current events to generations of Americans. Johnny Carson, the longtime host of NBC's Tonight Show, were cited for good-natured humor that kept the pulse of the nation. And Mr. Bush said race car driver Richard Petty had found freedom at 175 miles an hour. The other recipients were retired General John Vesey, architect I.M. Pei, diplomat Harry Schlaudeman, violinist Isaac Stern, singer Ella Fitzgerald, author Elie Wiesel, and actress Audrey Hepburn. That's our summary of the news. Now it's on to a Somalia update and Gergen and Shields. Somalia is our lead story tonight. We have 2 reports from that country and a newsmaker interview with the man in charge of the U.S. Somalia operation at the State Department. We begin with a report on today's developments from Alex Thompson of Independent Television News, who traveled to the critical inland town of Baidoa. His report begins in Mogadishu and the meeting of 2 major clan leaders, Mohammed Farah Adid, who's strong in central Somalia, and Ali Mahdi Mohammed, whose strength is in Mogadishu.
It had taken 6 months to get the two men together. There were handshakes, hugs and smiles for the cameras and a 7-point peace plan.
Number one, immediate and total cessation of hostilities and restoration of unity of the USC.
That is the United Somali Congress from which Ali Mahdi split during the civil war. It was further agreed that the technicals of van-mounted machine guns should report at once to joint peace supervisors, and that the neutral zones dividing this city should go. These are the areas which have suffered the worst destruction of the civil war in Mogadishu. But when Ali Mahdi got back to his northern territory, he suddenly made this declaration.
I have been elected for a president of Somali Republic, and I am president of Somalia. And I did is a chairman of USC.
So you're it?
I'm the president.
Claims of supremacy do not sit well with political reconciliation, and news of the peace plan was greeted in subdued fashion on the streets of Mogadishu.
These two leaders are two local leaders, and I've seen many times they agreed on items of peace plans, and they did not fulfill it.
Most of the people welcome it, and they hope the peace process will be successful.
The aid organizations are enthusiastic, saying if this isn't full-scale peace, it's certainly an important step towards political accommodation.
The UN has been working here towards reconciliation for 6 or 7 months now, and with the work that Ambassador Oakley of the United States has done in the past couple of days to be able to bring them together with Ambassador Katani of the United Nations has been very important.
We're absolutely thrilled that they have become friends again, and we hope that the ceasefire this time will hold.
To leave Mogadishu and travel west into the interior of the country is to leave the law imposed by the Marines and go back to that imposed by the Somalis and their weapons. US assault helicopters have pushed out as far as 30 miles or so west of the capital. They appeared to be inspecting this disused military airbase at Wandle Wayne, strategically important with the largest runway in the country for the transport of goods and food aid. By Doha, 140 miles west of the capital, what will the peace plan mean here in a place where there are as yet no Marines and plenty of gunmen? And old artillery pieces hidden away from the main road. The aid agencies say looters here are trying to grab everything as fast as they can before the Americans come into town. At least one aid post, they are sandbagging emplacements for their own armed guards. All the aid agencies in Baidoa have either pulled out as many people as they can or told those who remain to stay inside their compounds. Only recently, this radio station was attacked.
They tried to take the radios and something like that, but we tried our best to... I sat on the radio, and I told them they can take the radio when they kill me, but they cannot take before they kill me.
Aid agencies in the town say the threat of attack is constant until the Americans or French arrive. As one aid worker put it, this is a different world out here from Mogadishu, and there are notices outside all the aid compounds telling people to leave their guns outside. The feeding centres continue to work, even though the gunmen want their supplies of food, drugs, equipment, indeed anything they can take whilst there's still the opportunity. Doctors are dismayed. Thanks to the work of the aid agencies, Baidoa is not quite the international horror story that it was. But those agencies say much of the work they've been doing here may now be threatened by the immediate security situation.
As soon as the Americans can get here and get us a secure environment, we'll be able to get on with our job. If we withdraw, the whole program will fall to pieces just at the point when we're ready to expand. So it's extraordinarily important that we stay in place at this point in time.
The nearest the Americans have come so far are these high-level reconnaissance jets. The guards at one aid post applauded, but their employers want the Marines here first, and the peace process, they say, can flow from that.
Now we get a more detailed picture of daily life inside the capital, Mogadishu. It is chronicled by our correspondent, Charlene Hunter-Galt.
Here in Mogadishu, after 3 days of Operation Restore Hope, life is a bewildering blend of chaos punctuated by touches of normalcy. The traffic lights don't work, yet at one intersection, a policeman with no government to work for volunteers his services. His attempts at imposing order in a small space parallel those of Marines overhead, trying to impose order in the larger confusion. Both are struggling at nearly overwhelming odds with varying degrees of success. The traffic eventually moved on, and so did the gun-wielding bands who terrorized these streets until the Marines came. Huge military vehicles incongruously loom at a few checkpoints around this tiny city, and most people say the city seems more peaceful. But most everybody is still on edge. Today, the tension continued over last night's killing of 2 Somalis by French legionnaires at one of the checkpoints. The incident fueled existing tension between the French troops and the Somalis.
The difference is between the two is the American forces, even at the roadblocks, they treat people well, they stop traffic, they just start quickly and they let you go. And the French are rude, they're very rude, they even go into homes, they hit people with the
nightstick?
Yeah, and generally that kind of indiscipline is the difference between the two.
The incident was the major topic at today's U.S. military briefing. The incident highlighted the complex and seemingly unresolved question of coordination among the forces.
This is a dangerous zone. It's not exactly a war zone, but it's about as close as you can come to it without being a war zone from our point of view. There are many people with guns out there. There are many people who would do us harm. And do you harm. Some of you have already been victims of being robbed, beaten, etc. You know what it's like out there. The fact that we operate under slightly different rules, perhaps, than the French do, or the Belgians will, or the Canadians, or any other force, the UN forces here from Pakistan, is a matter of each country's policy.
One place the Marines are firmly in control is the U.S. Embassy, even though there's nothing much to control at this point. The newly raised flag flies over a building that was looted and stripped down to the wiring after U.S. personnel evacuated last year. There is still no definite plan for what will go in this building in the weeks ahead. For now, the major issue is security.
You know, we very realistically know that there have been a lot of thugs here, and these people are used to arms. There's a lot of arms here, and we're taking every precaution that we can to make sure that we take care of our force, and before we begin to move out and do anything else. So you have to be careful here.
How do you feel about being here?
I felt pretty good until the first night we were here and I got shot at. We were out of the compound, and 2 Somalians took some pop shots at us. Rounds impacted behind us somewhere. But they were pointing, we saw weapons and they were pointing right at us.
What'd you do?
I hit the deck.
A crowd has been gathering in front of the embassy gate since early morning, peering through the bars at the Marine guards who peer back. Most are waiting in vague hope that something will happen. Not much does, except for the occasional arrival or departure of military vehicles. But outside, problems. This man arrived with a metal fragment. He said it was from a military flare that struck and killed his 5-year-old son. He wants restitution. The guard at the gate took his name, but made no promises. Some of the victims of the ongoing warfare wind up at feeding centers set up by the various relief agencies. For the past 5 months, the International Committee of the Red Cross has provided the rice and beans to feed more than 3,500 men, women, and children in this one area. Some 700 of the children are orphans from Baidoa and other towns where the fighting and starvation are most severe. Today, there was news that should have bolstered their spirits. Now secured, the port is open for ships to bring in more food. And the two warring clan leaders agreed to a truce. But some Somalis say they've heard all that before. They say they plan to wait a while before calling that news good news.
Now to a newsmaker interview with the State Department's point man on Somalia. That's Frank Wisner, Undersecretary for International Security Affairs. He joins us from the State Department. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Pleasure to be with you.
How important is this ceasefire between the two warlords in Mogadishu?
I think it's important. It's a hopeful sign. It's the beginning of what will be a long road. There's much more that lies ahead before these two leaders fully settle their differences and the other Somali political leaders find a way to compromise. The United Nations is planning a conference, preliminary conference, of Somali political groups on the 4th of January in Addis Ababa. That'll be one more milestone. But I think the main point for all Americans to keep in mind is the long business of reconstituting Somalia will not limit, will not define our own actions. We have a job to do to get a secure environment in place, the relief operations going, and then our troops will be able to leave.
Will, in the meantime, before that January 4th conference, will Ambassador Oakley, who was successful in this case, will he go and try and get similar pacts between other warlords?
Well, the principal job of reconciliation and building a political future for Somalia lies with the United Nations, and particularly with the Secretary General's representative, Ismet Katani. Ambassador Oakley, who is our representative's first job, first and foremost, has been to get in touch with the clan leaders and make certain that our troops arrive in as peaceful surroundings as possibly can be organized, to make certain that we don't engage in, or not forced to engage in any hostile actions. Of course, you can't separate talking to political leaders from one side or the other from the longer political agenda, but that is fundamentally a UN responsibility, and we are in support of what the UN is trying to do.
Well, does that mean that before American forces go out to some of these other areas where they're still fighting and looting, that Ambassador Oakley is going to go ahead in advance and try and get those clans also to agree to stop fighting before the U.S. troops move in?
Well, I think that depends on the area. I know Ambassador Oakley and I, when we've talked, is hoping to be able at the right moment to get down to Kismayo, the other major port on the seacoast, see what he can do there. Whether the same is necessary in Baidoa or Beledweyne or one of the other Somali centers that American forces and coalition forces will be introduced into, I can't tell you today. That'll be a decision that will be taken there in Somalia on the ground.
The U.S. commander there, General Johnson, said today his Marines will not escort food convoys out until the security of his troops is assured. So does that mean the plan is that these Americans who are now gathering and building up the force in Mogadishu are not going to move out until more ceasefires have been negotiated with clan leaders in other towns?
Well, I would believe, without having spoken to General Johnson, that he's sending a signal that he wants to deploy his forces in a manner that is least likely to cause friction and hostility.
In other words, not to have to fight his way into those
Absolutely.
towns. Right.
Who wants to have to do that? We've seen in Mogadishu, with some careful handling, it's been possible to introduce American forces without any organized opposition. And I'm certain the General's point is to try to continue that habit into the future. But our job is to secure the environment, to open the roads, to deliver the food, to make a difference in the lives of the Somalis who are suffering.
Well,
I know our forces are aiming to do that and will carry that mission out.
As you know, I'm sure you hear, the relief agencies, the non-governmental agencies, are becoming by day more impatient for the U.S. troops to get there and protect them and their supplies. Baidoa was a case in point, and Kismayo another one. If it's safe for, people might wonder, if it's safe for TV crews to go and film around Baidoa, why isn't it safe for U.S. Marines to escort food convoys there?
Well, the United States Air Forces are deploying as fast as they possibly can. It has to be an orderly deployment. You have to be able to sustain it with the right amount of logistics. Somalia is not richly endowed with infrastructure, and what there is very, very badly run down. and it's simply hard to bring in the numbers of men and the equipment required in this sort of period of time. They're working flat out and doing, I think, a first-rate job, but it's going to take them several more days to get the right amounts built up and be able to move on and carry out the plan. To the best of my knowledge, they're right on schedule at the moment against some pretty awesome odds, but they still have more to do.
Is it the plan not really to move out into the country until the full 28,000 the U.S. has committed are in place there?
No, sir. I think if you recall the original descriptions of the operation that were laid out by Secretary Cheney and the Chairman, Chairman Powell, you see that there are stages, 4 stages in fact, and we will be moving on before the final troops of all aspects of the operation are on the ground. And while we're moving in as well, you will see, well, the French are already there, but you will see troops from other nations. This operation is truly remarkable. Virtually 30 nations have asked to come and make a contribution, showing just what a dramatic effect the decisions that have been taken have had on the world community at large.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the point that made some news today. The reports from Washington quoting officials in your department that the UN Secretary General, Mr. Boutros-Ghali, has asked the U.S., in fact on Wednesday asked the U.S. to expand its role beyond the current Security Council mission. Can you confirm that he has actually done that?
No, I think we've been in touch very closely with the Secretary General the period leading up to the Security Council resolution right through Wednesday, virtually on the phone thereafter. The Secretary General knows exactly what the American mission is. It's contained, first of all, in the Security Council resolution. It's contained in President Bush's letter to him, and he's in turn confirmed that he understands our mission is limited in time and in scope. It is limited to making certain the environment is secure, the ports open, the roads are open, the feeding and relief centers are secured, and the relief operation is to move forward. And then we want to turn the operation over to his peacekeeping operation, UNISOM, as quickly as that can possibly be organized. I think the Secretary General supports that, confirmed that again on Wednesday when we met with him.
But officials in your department tell reporters that he asked specifically that U.S. troops stay until the clans are disarmed, help suppress the drugs trade, and set up a police force. And you're saying he was told, no, we won't do that?
No, I'd look at it a different way. The operation that we've described to the Secretary General that he understands is aimed at the objectives I've described to you. Mm-hmm. Obviously, to the degree it is possible in the conduct of our operation to make a difference in the amount of arms that are around, all the better. It'll make the follow-on work of the peacekeepers easier and more effective. But Secretary General does know, as I said, exactly what we're committed to do in the time frame that lies before us, and we're going to stick to that commitment. He appreciates that.
Sorry to persist in this, but these reports made substantial news today, and the officials from your department were quoted as saying by the AP and Reuters that a request was made and it was getting a cool reception in Washington. In other words, no expansion of the U.S. Role.
No, the American role will not expand, that's right, but I assure you we listen attentively to the Secretary General.
Okay. Is it part of the U.S. mission to disarm the clans?
It is, the purpose of the mission is as I said it, and that is to deliver the food and to secure the environment, and to do that with the least possible violence. We are not in the operation of trying to police Somalia or bring an end to all the fighting. That's simply beyond the scope of what we've undertaken to do. We would like to see a political process get started where there is a maximum degree of reconciliation among Somalis themselves. That's the UN's job. We'll work in support of that objective, but it is not the objective of the American operation.
So what does that mean? That U.S. troops, as they will confiscate weapons as they encounter them, but they won't go out looking for arms caches aggressively and try and find them and confiscate them? Or what does it mean in practice?
I think you'd have to check with the Pentagon to get the exact wording of the rules of engagement, but in essence, American soldiers are authorized to defend themselves and to carry out their mission. And if they have to use force, the resolution that the Security Council passed is unique It's a peace enforcement resolution. They are authorized as an international writ to do just that. Of course, force is used in the last resort. That's not the aim. But they will do what they have to do to make certain that the people of Somalia are fed and that we can make a difference in ending the suffering.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any any updated information on the 13 relief workers who were said to have been taken hostage by the clan fighters in Kismayo?
I'm sorry to say I don't have anything more recent. I heard your news report. The situation in Kismayo is very fluid. With the exception of the relief workers, there's quite literally no one else from the coalition on the ground yet to be able to assess exactly where we stand. There are captures, there are releases. The situation is tense. The voluntary agencies that are working in Somalia are working under truly horrific circumstances. It's a dangerous area. There is a lot of violence, and there's even more violence as the troops approach and begin to secure where the relief operations will be underway. So I just hope, and I listened also to what they were saying to you this evening, there's a lot of bravery among those people. We admire them a lot, and we hope they can hold on a bit longer.
Would it be fair to say that a few days into this mission now, that what looked at first, perhaps unrealistically, might happen, that the clans would just not only melt away from Mogadishu, but would melt away altogether and get out of the way, may not be happening, or may not happen, that it's going to be either a very tough negotiation or some violence to secure the perimeter that is your mission to do, to ensure the food supplies get through. In other words, it's a difficult thing ahead.
Evans, I don't know. I think it's a glass half full. Perhaps you see it as half empty. That the American...
I'm asking you how full it is.
Yeah, the American forces have deployed. They've deployed with great peace. They've been welcomed by the people of Mogadishu. The political leaders based in Mogadishu, the two, Ali Mahdi and Adid, have come together, have talked about preliminary arrangements to bring an end to violence. We're aiming now to get to the interior. There's a lot more confidence in what will happen. Nations are rallying to the purpose. It's possible now to begin the deployment of a proper peacekeeping organization. I think it's not been a bad start. Of course, there's a lot more to do. There are a great many uncertainties. Somalia is not going to be rebuilt overnight. But I think I'm in renewed hope and confidence that we can get our job done and move on and be replaced responsibly in a reasonable period of time.
Well, Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Still to come on the NewsHour tonight, Gergen and Shields plus Drew. But first, this is Pledge Week on public television. We are taking a short break now so your public television station can ask for your support. That support helps keep programs like this on the air.
You'll find it all here every weekday evening at 7 p.m. Excellent in-depth coverage of major national and world events. I'm Jim Lewis, and I'm talking, of course, about the McNeil-era NewsHour. It's one of the best news sources available on television or anywhere else, and one that comes to you exclusively here on the stations of Oregon Public Broadcasting. You can support this kind of service on OPB by making a telephone call. In Portland, you call 245-2345. Anywhere else that you hear my voice, call us toll-free, 1-800-245-2346. If you'd like to make a generous pledge to Oregon Public Broadcasting, we have a very special offer for you, a package that can really add to your TV viewing options. Now, the first part of this package is a VCR Plus. That VCR Plus will be yours with any pledge of $150 and allows you to program your VCR. Now the other part of the package, your subscription to Oregon Focus. You'll find all the VCR Plus code numbers right in the program guide every month. Another very special offer for you at the $150 level. Perhaps reading the Oregonian this morning, you noted that a new book on JFK called Reckless Youth by Nigel Hamilton has had to be reprinted because it's become so popular. Well, we have them here at OPB, and one is yours with your pledge of $12.50 a month to OPB. Let me introduce to you the host of Northwest Week here on Oregon Public Broadcasting, Claudia Brown. Claudia?
Thanks, Jim. Now, to get the package that Jim just talked about, just call 245-2345 or 1-800-245-2346. Your pledge will happen just that much faster if you use your credit card, so get it out of the wallet. The processing time will be shortened, and what's more, it'll be more convenient for you and for OPB. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover Card are all accepted. Just tell your phone volunteer from the Oregon Pilots Association which credit card you'll be using, and all the details will be handled neatly and efficiently. In fact, the toughest thing in the whole process is just picking up that phone. Tom?
Thanks, Claudia. Hello, I'm Tom Doggett. You know, Jim, if Margie Belay was here, she'd say those telephones aren't ringing. Now, let's get those telephones ringing. The McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour isn't just any TV show, you know, and Oregon Public Broadcasting isn't any TV channel. Public television is unique, and it owes its uniqueness to the fact that it gets a lot of support directly from you, the viewers. How much? Well, actually, 49%. It's just under half the money that we need to run OPB. It comes directly from your contributions. It's money needed to bring you the quality programs that you see on Oregon Public Broadcasting. You and your support, thanks for calling, are essential to maintain the schedule you watch and enjoy on OPB.
Hello, I'm Noah Adams. You usually hear me on National Public Radio's All Things Considered, every day at 5 on the radio stations of Oregon Public Broadcasting. Tonight I'm asking you to call one of the numbers on your screen and become a member of the OPB television family. It's where you can see in-depth news programs like the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, Washington Week in Review, and Wall Street Week. Whether you watch OPB TV, listen to OPB Radio, or both, it's worth your time and your support. Thank you.
And thank you, Noah. I would remind you that the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour is not a program perhaps that you watch every single evening, but when you want it, when you depend on it, it is there. Well, we are not here every weekend. We invite your support only 4 times throughout the year to support programming you see 52 weeks a year. But when we need you, we hope that you will be there. To make your pledge to OPB, just call 245-2345 if you're in the metropolitan area, or 1-800-245-2346 from anywhere else. It's toll-free, of course. How much should you pledge? Well, earlier I suggested $150, but if your budget won't handle a load like that right now, consider a $60 pledge. At that level, you could receive an OPB etched coffee mug, just the thing to help you get going on a Monday morning, or a 1993 Oregon Field Guide calendar. The choice is yours, but we hope you will make the OPB choice. The number to call to do that, again, in the metropolitan area, 245-2345. From anywhere else in our viewing area, all of Oregon and southern Washington, call toll-free 1-800-245-2346.
When you call us with a pledge of $35 or more, you'll receive the full benefits of an OPB membership. We're talking about a subscription to Oregon Focus. That's our program guide. And also a membership card, which will serve you as a ticket to Oregon. It brings you discounts from dozens of businesses and organizations all across our state.
The company you work for may double or even triple the amount of your pledge, so when you call, ask the phone volunteer to send you a list of firms that do that. If your employer is on the list, let your personnel manager know you've contributed and your pledge to OPB will be multiplied. But the key to it all is your individual pledge, so please call. The number is 245-2345 in Portland and 1-800-245-2346.
Hello, I'm Steve Amon, Director of Local Production at OPB. And I guess what I'm really here to do is to thank you, because without your generous support, we wouldn't be able to bring you programs like Oregon Field Guide and Northwest Week. And we are committed to producing quality local programs that explore, inform, and entertain. But we can't do it without your help. Over 75% of the money needed to put Oregon Field Guide and Northwest Week on the air comes directly from viewer support. So please, call that number on your screen. You really do make a difference.
Steve Amon hosts Oregon Field Guide here on OPB. That show produced right here, one of the programs you support when you become a member of Oregon Public Broadcasting. Local productions are one of the things that OPB has always been committed to, but it's a very expensive process. In fact, it's something we simply could not do if it were not for viewer support, something many public television stations across the country simply are unable to do. In Oregon, you are the difference that allows programs like that to be on the air, as well as Northwest Week. In Portland, call 245-2345. Elsewhere in Oregon and southern Washington, wherever you're watching, call toll-free 1-800-245-2346.
I produce and host Northwest Week, and let me tell you, it's a program that we put on the air so that we can give you a little extra edge to do something on local news and public affairs that you might not find on the other stations in town. So when you make your pledge, here's one way you can fulfill it. Here's how OPB can keep track of your pledge so you don't have to. Just have the amount of your monthly installment automatically taken out of your check every month and transferred to the OPB Foundation. There's no bill and no stamp to lick. All the information is in your pledge envelope. If that option appeals to you, just tell the phone volunteers when you call.
And those volunteers are busy, and thank you very much for all of you who have called. Well, we talked about the Oregon Field Guide a moment ago. We'd like to remind you that you can receive that beautiful 1993 Oregon Field Guide calendar when you pledge just $60 to OPB. There's also the OPB etched coffee mug, and that's a dandy too. It's a tough choice, really. If you pledged $35 last year, why not make it $60 this time and let us say thank you by sending you one of these beautiful premiums. In addition, of course, you'll get your subscription to Oregon Focus and your ticket to Oregon, the OPB membership card.
Now, as Tom indicated, the phones have been a little quiet during this break, and I hope as we end it and return to the program that you will sound us out with a lot of noise. Please go to the phone right now. Make your vote count for the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour. The number to call in Portland is 245-2345. From anywhere else in our viewing area, anywhere that you can hear our voice, call us toll-free at 1-800-245-2346. Now, we are about to rejoin the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, but you still can call us. Many of you don't realize that we stay here in the studio between breaks ready to take your call. Oregon Public Broadcasting needs your support. I think that it deserves it. Let us hear from you. Now, here's the second half of the NewsHour.
If you'd prefer to mail us your contribution, here's the address. Oregon Public Broadcasting Foundation, Post Office Box 4373, Portland 97208. However, if you'd like to call in your contribution, our phone volunteers will be glad to take your pledge. In Portland, 245-2345. Elsewhere in our viewing area, 1-800-245-2346.
President-elect Clinton named 4 more people to the leadership of his new government today. We have some Friday night analysis of all of the Clinton appointments thus far and other matters political. From Gergen and Shields, David Gergen, editor-at-large of U.S. News and World Report, and syndicated columnist Mark Shields. They are joined tonight by Washington columnist Elizabeth Drew, who is writing a book about the first year of the Clinton administration. Well, let's go through today's 4 quickly. Robert Reich, Mr. Clinton's friend, to be Secretary of Labor. David, what can you add or subtract?
Well, I think just as yesterday's appointments, Jim, by and large gave a lot of strength and power to the moderates, the conservative side of the Democratic Party. Today's appointments lean very much toward the liberal side of the Democratic Party, and Bob Reich is certainly a leader on that liberal wing. I think that his appointment to the Labor Department says that the Labor Department is growing ever more in importance as the Clinton people emphasize a long-term economic plan to raise the skill levels of the American workforce. It's very central to what Clinton campaigned on. Bob Reich has been an apostle of that for a long time. Now at Labor, he'll be able to work that out, and I think it means that not only will we will have people like Benson and Panetta working on the short term, Bob Reich will be working on the long term. Reich's argument is it's not enough to get the economy back on track. That track leads nowhere. It leads to lower wages. The way to get higher wages is to get higher skills.
Elizabeth, what do we need to know about Bob Reich?
Well, he's very close to Bill Clinton, as Clinton said today. Therefore, I think he'll have his ear on a number of questions, not just the ones he's dealing in. There had been some speculation he would be in charge of the Economic Council in general. I saw him earlier this week, and he said, look, that job takes an honest broker and someone who doesn't need to be in the public eye. That's not me. I'm all wrong for that. And so he understood that, and that he can now apply his ideas. He's an idea merchant. He's a self-designated.
Written 8 books.
Lots of books. He's
a
a public explainer and communicator, and now he gets to put his hands on this department and see if he can reshape it to, as David said, concerns about long-term productivity. He believes very much that we shouldn't focus on whether this recession ends or when it ends, that that's just the business cycle, that there are long-term trends that really need to be addressed in terms of productivity, skills, retraining. This is where Clinton will make his mark if Reich can pull it off.
Yeah. Mark, what do you have to say about Bob Reich?
Well, first of all, Jim, it's a departure from Democratic presidencies of the past, where the Secretary of Labor was most regularly somebody that the AFL-CIO Executive Committee had said, this is our guy and he'll represent our interests. That's no longer the case. Secondly, Bob Reich does hold to a fundamental tenet, which is the only unique asset this country has economically, or the fundamentally unique asset, is its people and the training of its people. And I think both Elizabeth and David are right. He will have the ear of Bill Clinton, but more importantly, he will also be on a mission that Bill Clinton raised time and again in the campaign, and that is improving the skills, the lifetime training of American workers to make this nation more competitive.
All right, Mark, staying with you, moving to Donna Shalala, she said, as she said at the news conference today, and everybody already knew this, that she was Mrs. Clinton's friend. She will be the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. Some of the health care reform people were saying today, most of them in blind quotes, that they were concerned about the fact that she didn't have any specific experience in health care reform. How do you read this appointment, Mark, in light of what Clinton has said he wants to do about that?
Well, I think, first of all, Jim, she's somebody with enormous political skills, recognized across the board. She was quite skillful in the Carter administration as assistant secretary, and had a good reputation on the Hill and professionally. She is somebody who pointed out today that she's had considerable experience at the University of Wisconsin in dealing with their hospital, hands-on experience. Hey, this is the big one, Jim. If you're talking about getting the deficit under control, as he talked yesterday with Leon Panetta and Alice Rivlin, superb appointment, then half of the federal budget is right under Donna Shalala's pen. I mean, that's where it's going to be, and the only way to limit it is by limiting Medicare, and the only way you limit Medicare, quite frankly, is by limiting health care expenses. I think she's somebody who's dealt with a legislature, dealt with a Republican governor. I think she brings great skills.
What do you think of Donna Shalala? Great skills or whatever she brings?
She's very smart. All of these people show some general traits that Clinton seemed to go for. There's brains and people that he's comfortable with. Now, Donna Shalala succeeded Hillary Clinton as chairman of the board of the Children's Defense Fund, Marian Wright Edelman's group that defends children's and children's rights and so on. And I think it would have been surprising had they not named to the head of HHS someone who's very interested in children's issues, because Hillary Clinton has made it very clear that this is very important to her. And in fact, Donna Shalala has been close to both Clintons for a long time. It was clear they wanted her in the cabinet. It was a question of where.
Yeah. David?
Well, there's no question, Jim, she's very highly regarded. She is regarded as a very strong innovator at the University of Wisconsin, and she's got a long history in both education and Washington life. Beyond that, I would say that it's worth keeping in mind that she will raise a red flag among people in the medical community, and I think among some conservatives, as leading to more government intrusion and intervention in the solution to the health care problem. There is, among Democrats, a split largely between, say, Southern Democrats who want to hold down the cost of medical care by competition within the private sector, and Northeastern Democrats who want to use the government to put cost controls on the medical sector. And I would imagine that she's going to come out more in that latter group with the Northern liberals.
Yeah.
Jim, can I make one point about that? I really think that medical policy, the reform of medical care, is going to be made at the White House. Bill Clinton said that to members of Congress this week, and they were very impressed with how much he had already got into it. This is going to be a presidential policy that will be worked out. Donna Shalala will be in it, but it's going to be run out of the White House. In fact, the president said, I'm going to do it. Now, that may be more than he can, but his other advisors will be in on it.
And Donna Shalala, meanwhile, will be running HHS, which is a very huge thing, yeah. All right, Elizabeth Carroll Browner, she was Vice President-elect Gore's choice to run EPA. She's from Florida, worked for Governor Childs when he was here as a U.S. Senator. What else do we need to know about her?
Well, Florida, next to California, or maybe equal with California, is where the issues are the toughest and the strongest as between environment and growth. It's an everyday battle of enormous proportions, and her reputation is of someone who's been very good at that. And that is another theme that we had throughout the Clinton campaign that he talked about again today. It's not a trade-off between environment and growth. You should be able to work it out to do both.
Yeah. David, moving to Laura Tyson, there were 4 appointments today, 4 announcements today. 3 of them were women. Laura Tyson is an economist, University of California, Berkeley, somebody known for her views on trade. What else do we need to know?
Well, I think that she represents a major departure from Michael Boskin, and perhaps one of the sharpest departures the Clinton administration will make with a previous appointee, and that is that Boskin was a purist on free trade, and Laura Tyson is anything but a purist. She is, some people would identify her with a managed trade school. She says that's not quite true, but there's no question. I think what she will bring, Jim, is a much more aggressive effort to support American industry, particularly high-tech industries, which are under assault from overseas. Now, many in the high-tech industry, say in Silicon Valley, have liked Bill Clinton for exactly that kind of promise of support, and I think he's delivering with Laura Tyson.
Yeah, what do you think, Mark?
Well, I think David's right in terms of what a departure she is. This is an economist who argues that the nation's national security is tied directly to its economic security. She has made that case over and over again, is persuaded. It became almost a mantra of the Clinton administration campaign itself. Add to that, Jim, she does not uncritically embrace free trade in all its forms. She departs from that ideology, which has been rampant in Washington certainly the past 4 years, and for most of the Reagan years. So I think it's an interesting choice, and I think it's an intriguing choice.
Elizabeth, is he going to listen to Laura Tyson, he being Bill Clinton?
Well, he did emphasize that these were people whose views he trusted. Of course, these are the things you say when you name them. I don't know that they haven't built themselves a little redundancy here on various economic groups. Yesterday, of course, setting up the National Economic Council under Bob Rubin, and saying that Lloyd Benson is going to be the chief spokesman on the economy, and then you have the Council of Economic Advisors. This all has to be worked out. I suspect it's a relationship that the chemistry of which we'll be watching all the time, and the relationship will evolve as to who it is that Clinton really listens to. And of course, he'll also be listening to Bob Reich.
Yeah, Jim,
yes.
If I may add this point, it seems to me what he has done here is set up, and I think it's quite intentional, to set up a creative tension within his own advisory group, and that is the people he named yesterday to his economic team tend to be very strong deficit hawks, against much more spending, against a lot of unnecessary government intervention in affairs. And today he's in the next tier, he's put a number of people who are more liberal. And I think there are going to be clashes between this group. That can be very healthy. Sometimes it can be destructive, but it can produce for him a very rich diet of discussion about what American policy ought to be. I think it's quite an interesting collection, and there's no question there are going to be differences of opinion between them.
Yes, Mark.
Jim, let me just say, I think that Bill Clinton demonstrated on the choices, especially yesterday's, and in no way denigrate today's, but yesterday's choices reflected to me a sense of personal security and confidence that we haven't seen frequently in Washington in a leader. He chose people who are real, strong, independent individuals. Leon Panetta comes to the job of OMB perhaps with better credentials than anybody who's ever held that position. 12 years he's been in preparation for it. He's been chairman of the House Budget Committee. He's been there's nothing about that whole budget that he doesn't know or can't find out in 35 seconds. He's a hell of a good politician. Alice Rubin brings remarkable credentials as somebody who has been strong on the deficit. They're both, unlike the Bush-Darman team, which said, we'll tell you what the tax cuts are, Congress, and we'll show the small increases. We'll announce those in Head Start. You make the painful cuts. They've made the painful cuts. Leon Panetta did them in 1990. Lloyd Benson is a grown-up, a very serious, authoritative player. The gnomes in Zurich are not biting their nails or losing sleep because Lloyd Benson's been chosen, that's for sure.
Elizabeth, how would you characterize the team up till now?
I think the word team is terribly important. Clinton yesterday especially emphasized team. He's talked several times, as he did yesterday, about his admiration for George Bush's national security team. In other words, that Scowcroft, Baker, and Cheney seem to work well together, and he wants that in his administration. I thought what was striking was that yesterday there was enough sort of questioning and querying, well, why these insiders? Well, Mark makes a point. You can't put someone in charge of the budget who doesn't know about the budget. But probably in part in response to that today, they kept saying, this group represents change, so they're getting both.
We have to go. Elizabeth, Mark, David, thank you all very much.
Again, the main stories of this Friday. President-elect Bill Clinton announced the appointment of Harvard professor Robert Reich as Secretary of Labor and University of Wisconsin Chancellor Donna Shalala as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Somalia's two main warlords agreed to a ceasefire in the capital, Mogadishu, but fighting continued elsewhere in the country. And this evening, a federal judge threw out a key charge in the Iran-Contra case against Caspar Weinberger. The judge said the lying to Congress charge violated a 5-year statute of limitations. Good night, Jim.
Good night, Robin. We'll see you on Monday night. Have a nice weekend. I'm Jim Lara. Thank you and good night.
Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour is provided by AT&T and by PepsiCo. PepsiCo. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
This is PBS.
Jim Lewis. Is the McNeil-Lehrer NewsHour something you look forward to? Does it give you insights into world events? If you answered yes to one of those questions, then you should support the NewsHour with a pledge to Oregon Public Broadcasting. And you need to know this is your last opportunity to do it. We will not be back on Monday evening, so if you care about the NewsHour, please call now. If you're calling from Portland, the number is 245-2345, or for your convenience, we have a toll-free number for pledges coming from anywhere else in our viewing area, 1-800-245-2346. When you're considering how much to pledge, here's a suggestion that might help you decide.